There's a lot happening in the nation, a lot happening in Washington, D.C. behind the scenes. Oftentimes, what people see before the camera, that's nothing in comparison to all the jockeying, the lobbying, and all the threatening that's happening behind the scenes in order to get people to do what one particular party wants them to do. And Tyrone Bowman live, welcome to the program. I want to get right down to it. I'll talk about this article from the Washington Post. The headline reads, U.S. deportations are at the highest level since 2014. The ICE report has shown. And what a lot of people don't realize is that things are about to get terribly, terribly worse in this nation, and all because people thought they were smarter than Donald Trump. And I'm here to tell y'all, he played y'all for suckers, he played you for a fool, and it worked. So do not complain when he implements Project 2024 the way that he says that he's going to do. And I have to give it to them. Hand well played. Kudos to the MAGAites. They won. By hook or crook. It doesn't matter. They won. All right, now let's get down to this article here. According to the Washington Post, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement deported 271,484 immigrants to nearly 200 countries last fiscal year, the highest tally in a decade, according to the agency's annual report published this past Thursday. Most deportees had crossed the U.S. southern border illegally, part of a record number of people fleeing authoritarian regimes, poverty, and economic collapse in the Western Hemisphere after the pandemic. The ICE report covered enforcement operations from October 1, 2023 to September 30th. The report is ICE's final accounting of immigration enforcement under the Biden administration before President-elect Donald Trump takes office on January 20. So they kept saying that Biden did not deport anybody. They kept saying that the border was just a total mess and etc., etc., etc. Keep believing the lies here. Just keep on believing them. Let's get back to this article. So, the ICE report covered, as I said, enforcement operations from October 1, 2023 to September 30th. The report is ICE's final accounting of immigration enforcement under the Biden administration before President-elect Donald Trump takes office on January 20. Trump has promised to immediately launch the largest deportation campaign in American history, though he has offered few or conflicting details about how he would manage it. Staffing levels of immigration enforcement officers have been stagnant for years. Our agency is chronically underfunded, but our workforce is adaptable, resilient, and agile. And they set the bar high within the federal government, said the ICE Tops official Patrick J. Leachithner. In a statement, ICE is an apolitical agency, and one thing I can tell you about our workforce is that they're here to investigate crimes and enforce the laws Congress sets forth. Well, let's see what happens when the people who are going to come to power are hiring illegal immigrants to cut their grass, to take care of their children, to do all the stuff that everyday people don't want to do. Let's see if they're pro-law enforcement then, because the majority of them have illegal immigrants taking care of their children, cutting their grass, taking care of their homes. So let's just see how much law and order they're going to enforce there. Now let's get back to this article. Biden took office in 2021, pledging to pause deportations, and he sent Congress a bill that would have allowed most of the 11 million undocumented immigrants in the country to get on a path to citizenship. But surging border crossing derailed his plans, and Biden officials ended up expanding rather than reducing detention and deportations. Illegal border crossings have plunged since Biden implemented new rules last summer that sharply restrict asylum claims, resulting in far more migrants being deported than released into the United States with a pending court case. Deportations by ICE during Trump's first term peaked at 267,000 to 260 during the 2019 fiscal year, data show. Under Trump, deportees were more likely to be individuals arrested in the interior of the United States rather than recent border crossers. Federal immigration officials said several factors drove the overall increase in enforcement and removal operations during the past year, particularly to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, which accepted more flights transporting those deported from the United States. These actions enhance ERO's ability to scale up removal operations and lay the groundwork for the increase of removal in FY 2024, the report says. ICE also expanded after intensive diplomatic efforts the number of charter flights last year to countries in the Eastern Hemisphere, including the first large removal flight to China since fiscal 2018. 500 deportees were dispatched to China last year, down slightly from fiscal 2019. Other flights went to Albania, India, Senegal, and Uzbekistan. Records show Biden largely kept his promise to focus on immigrants who are a top priority for removal, including recent border crossers and people who pose a threat to national security or public safety. Approximately 11 million undocumented immigrants live in the United States, and immigration officials typically remove a tiny fraction of them each year, in part because of years-long backlogs in U.S. immigration courts, budget constraints, and public opposition to removals in many states. Thank you, Maria. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, would you kindly do so for me? Thank you. The 2024 report shows that the highest number of immigrants removed from the United States went to Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador in that order. Those countries typically cooperate with deportations, and their citizens are likely to be significant targets for removal under the Trump administration. Venezuela, however, is less cooperative. People from that South American country are one of the largest groups on ICE's deportation docket. But last year, just 256 people were deported. Trump and his surrogates have provided few details about how they would steer a dramatic expansion in enforcement. ICE has about 6,000 immigration enforcement officers, roughly the same staffing level that it had a decade ago, the report shows. During that time, the number of people with pending immigration cases on ICE's docket, individuals who are not detained but under ICE's management, has nearly quadrupled to about 8 million. Trump also promised to aggressively increase deportations during his first term, but because of resistance from Democratic-led cities and states, he never surpassed the Obama administration's record of more than 400,000 removals a year. So it seems like Obama's immigration removal policy was far greater than Trump's and Biden's combined. Former acting ICE Director Tom Homan, Trump's pick to serve as border czar, has said the new administration will focus on deporting people who pose a threat to public safety and national security. Those groups are also the Biden administration's top enforcement priorities. Homan has also said immigrants who have already pending deportation orders, nearly 1.5 million, will also be a priority when Trump takes office. But internal ICE data shows nearly half of those individuals are ineligible to be sent back because their countries won't take them. They have received a reprieve from a judge or due to another factor. Homan said operations will differ in a significant way from Biden's. Anyone in the United States illegally could be eligible for arrest and deportation. Biden officials said in 2021 that simply being in the United States unlawfully would not be grounds for a deportation, directing ICE to focus more intensely on criminals. That meant most of the 11 million people were spared from enforcement. Of the 271,484 immigrants ICE deported last year, about 33% had criminal records or pending criminal charges, according to the 2024 data. The majority of deportees were recent border crossers transferred to ICE by the U.S. Border Patrol. Traffic violations, drug offenses, immigration violations, and assault are the top categories of criminal charges among those taken into ICE's custody, the report shows. Traffic violations. Traffic violations. And just let that sink in for a minute. Traffic violations. Last year, ICE deported 411 unoccupied minors who arrived without their parents, compared with more than 6,300 removals in 2019. Officials deported more than 49,000 migrant family members last year, up from nearly 18,000 the prior year. Biden and his supporters argue that undocumented immigrants are essential workers and cherished neighbors, and he urged Congress to pass a bill that would have granted them a path to citizenship. That measure fizzled as illegal border crossings surged to an average of 2 million people a year. Officials soon pivoted to increase enforcement, but widespread public disapproval of Biden's policies dodged the administration, and Trump again seized on the issue to criticize Democrats on the campaign trail. Trump will soon face his own challenges as he tries once more to implement his promises. He is likely to encounter fresh opposition to his deportation plans from states such as California and Illinois, where political leaders and voters oppose uprooting longtime immigrants who work on their houses and have U.S. citizen children. To expand deportations, Trump also will need assistance from prison and jails across the nation, where officials tend to arrest most immigrants in the interior, often after a traffic stop or a criminal arrest. States such as Texas, where many undocumented immigrants live, eagerly cooperate with ICE, while California, Illinois, and other states have passed laws limiting cooperation with ICE, in part because they say immigrants are long-standing residents working in jobs that Americans will not do. That is a stipulated fact. The specter of splitting up immigrant families also looms larger over immigration enforcement in the Trump administration. Trump faced international condemnation when he forcibly separated migrant parents from their children at the U.S. border. Southern border to deter illegal crossings, many fear his interior enforcement will also split up families. Well, it's going to be far worse than people could ever imagine. There will be no mercy. There will be no compassion. Never surrender. Never submit.